Welcome to the Institute of Midlands, Institute of Hospitality, excuse me, Midlands branch. We've been running a series of webinars looking to engage with our members and non-members. A lot of the focus has previously been on hotels and restaurants, and there was some focus, some requests to extend that a bit further to other sectors of the hospitality industry. So I'm very pleased today to be looking at our insight into customer expectations going forward, to cover three different areas: weddings, meetings and events, and the wider hospitality industry, with three guests to form a panel discussion. We have from Director of the HBAA, Leigh Cowlishaw, the founder and CEO of Wedding Dates, Ciara Crossan, and customer service consultant, perhaps better known for many years from the Waterside Inn, Diego Masciaga. We're going to go through a few questions. Thank you for those people who've put some questions to us. Looking for a panel discussion, and welcoming any input from those attending with some additional questions if you would like to keep it sort of live and fresh if we can. But first, as we look to the questions, perhaps a brief introduction from our three panelists. Perhaps Leigh, would you like to go first, please?
Absolutely, thank you. Thank you for inviting me to attend today. So, as said, my name is Leigh Cowlishaw, and I am a consultant exec director at the HBAA. I was a chair of the HBAA in 2016, and since then have stayed on the board. HBAA itself is made up of venues, so hotels, service department and conference centres, and also agencies, so event management agencies, venue finding agencies. So our membership at the moment is about 300. 200 are the venue side, and that can be from an independent property right up to an international global chain. Some of our members I can see are on here today. And then, as I said, the agencies can be anything from a one person right up to a global agency. So we represent quite a depth and breadth across the industry. We are members of other organisations to help us to get that wider collective voice. Our biggest USP as a membership organisation is our code of practice, and also the guidance provided to members whilst we all continue to navigate our way round and through this situation and into recovery as well. So thank you again for inviting me.
Thank you, Leigh. Diego, perhaps just a brief introduction from you, please.
Yes, good afternoon, all of you. And well, thank you so much for inviting me today at this webinar, which is, it's wonderful for me to be part of you. Now, what can I say? I've been in hospitality for more than 40 years. Hospitality, but also in catering. Now, I've been traveling around the world a lot. I worked in France, in Germany, in the US, and most of the time in the UK. I work in famous, obviously, restaurants and hotels. Now, my career has changed on the last 2 years, and now I'm a consultant. I'm a consultant in hospitality and catering. I'm working with several hotels, restaurants, but also with catering company and hospitality company. And what we try to achieve is our goal is to make people understand how important is customer service and the service. And especially nowadays, after this pandemic, I think it's more important than ever. And so that's what we do, my company and I, we try to have that. So thank you very much. And I look forward to having a chat with you later. Yeah.
I'll unmute myself first. Sorry, there we go. Thank you very much, Diego. And Ciara, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ciara Crossan, and I'm the founder and CEO of Wedding Dates. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm beaming in virtually from Cork in the southern part of Ireland, but Lord knows I would love to be in the Midlands with you. Give me any excuse to get on a plane again. I seriously miss in-person events. So I've been in this industry for 13 years now, and my company, Wedding Dates, provides consultancy, digital marketing, promotion, and event sales software. We work primarily with hotels and wedding venues to generate more leads for them for their wedding business, then nurture those leads through to appointment and booking, and most importantly, improve conversion rates at every stage of the sales pipeline. So every year we complete an annual survey, and we just did ours in January, February. Following a detailed survey of over 1,000 couples, we produced an industry report, which is available to download, and I'm going to share some of the stats of that with you guys today, and I'll pop the link up so you guys can download the report as well if you like. And I'm really looking forward to the lively discussion today.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Ciara. We're looking at, and we're considering the question of an insight from the returning customer. So we've got some survey information from Ciara, but we've got the experience and the observation and the understanding from Leigh and Diego to add to that, as well as Ciara's, of course. So we start off with, as the venues are beginning to open, we've got sort of 3 dates. We've had through April, sites are beginning to open up. Then we've got another date in May, and then we got another date in June that we're expecting, and that's probably the biggest concern for most people, that it's you know, this is, nothing's guaranteed and definite. But if we work on the basis that we're going to be gradually opening up and businesses are going to be opening up, we want to understand the question and to share what the guest expectations will be, how we can prepare for this, what plans are already in place to exceed guest expectations, what else we can do. So we've got a few questions. So the first question to start us off is from Timothy Cullen from the Exchange Restaurant. And the question is, can we expect social distancing to become the new normal for at least the short-term future? Now, he suggests that might be up to 3 years, but nobody, to my knowledge, has defined that. So social distancing, masks required or desired, for how long? Leigh, what would you think to that? What are your thoughts?
I think we just don't know at the moment in terms of the social distancing. And I think it's very interesting when you're talking to hotels and venues, and from an agency's perspective, is that when we are requesting proposals for future meetings and events, is that socially distancing may not actually feature on that at the moment. Obviously, as you talked about, we've got the dates of 17th of May, we've got 21st of June. And at the moment, touch wood, you know, fingers crossed for all of us that we are on track for those dates with what the government has said to date. However, I don't know in terms of social distancing. What I would say is that things have changed, even for the short term, in terms of the way that we do business and the way that actually we'll interact and engage in a hotel or a venue. And that will be here for some time and to stay. You know, hotels and venues have worked tirelessly over the last year, updating processes, protocols, putting in new you know, ways in which you can attend a meeting or you can attend a function or a private dinner. And they, you know, those sort of things may be here to stay, not just because of COVID, but the fact is they are things for the future as well. And I think we're going to have to get used to the fact that things will and have changed, but some things may not be there forever. So I probably haven't answered your question, but I think it's more of the way of adapting and adopting this as a way of life for some time.
Would you think that we should be driven exclusively by what the government is telling us we should do, or what guests prefer, would like? And I'm thinking particularly about people who maybe, as we're looking forward, there isn't a requirement, but maybe some social distancing masks or whatever for those people who feel more vulnerable might be a priority if we're looking to attract and reassure people.
Is that right to me?
Yeah, yes, please.
Yeah.
Pick it up, and I'll move it on to.
Yeah, I think absolutely. I mean, we are a service industry. We're used to welcoming people into our properties and, you know, showing them a great experience, you know, something that they will think about, and whether that is a wedding, whether that is a meeting, whether that is an overnight stay, or whether that is a conference. We are used to welcoming people into our environment, and therefore safety has always been paramount, regardless of COVID. The safety aspect of somebody attending something or staying over is always a primary concern, whether you're the event organizer, whether you're the proprietor of the property, whether you're the agency booking it. All of that, you know, hasn't changed. That is always paramount. And, you know, we are, I would say, a safe industry in terms of the way that we do conduct business. You know, from a track and trace perspective, we've been doing that for years, whether that's through delegate registration, through rooming lists, through people check into properties. We have been doing that for years as an industry, and it feels in some areas they're just catching up with us, and so we should be ahead of the game in that. And those things are here to stay. And I think, you know, the guest expectations are that you are preempting their needs, their safety, and that they are primary, and they absolutely are here to stay.
I think as well, Bim, if I can jump in on that. Yeah. I mean, it goes without saying that we're all going to follow the government guidelines, whether that's us in business or indeed, you know, the returning customers themselves. For the most part, hopefully they are following the rules. I have heard some horror stories from some hospitality people with, you know, people asking for extra, can I just have one other person, or the baby in the high chair doesn't count, and all that. But I think, you know, it will come down as well from the safety perspective of people will self-select. Okay, so if people are feeling, you know, particularly vulnerable or uncomfortable with, you know, crowds, or, you know, attending an event like a wedding, they'll simply opt not to do that. And so I think that will definitely come into play as well. I think, you know, we will be very led by the guests, as you said. And I think, you know, there is a certain cohort of people who are nervous, for sure, but there's another cohort of people who feel like we've been in jail for the last year, we've been cooped up, and people are dying to get out and get back, you know, to be with people face to face. I would certainly fall in under that camp as well, being, you know, of course, being mindful of the rules. I would see it that masks are probably here to stay for a lot longer than social distancing. I know that in Barcelona recently, they were doing a kind of a test and experiment of getting people back to live music, and they had 5,000 people in an arena, and they all had to have a negative PCR test before they could get in. And I think out of the 5,000, I think there was, I heard the guy on the radio talking about it, there was like 6 people who failed the test and weren't able to come in. So quite a low number out of 5,000. Everybody else was in. They did have to wear masks, but they didn't have to socially distance. So I could imagine that type of thing happening, and perhaps, you know, regular testing being a part of particularly large scale events into the future, for sure.
Thank you. Diego, potentially looking at masks, not necessarily social distancing. Do you agree? And what impact will that have? What do we as an industry need to do to accommodate that?
Well, what I think, as you all said, I mean, we don't know yet. I mean, only scientists knows what's going to happen in the future, and we have to listen to them. I'm honest, at the beginning, when I was training, I wear a mask. I found it very uncomfortable, but now it's just become just normal. I mean, people used to say, oh, I cannot see your smile, I cannot see your eyes. But now, if you look at it, it's just normal. If you see someone without a mask, you say, whoa, why doesn't he wear a mask? Something is wrong. So I believe that the mask will be there for a long time. And I believe then guests want to see the staff with a mask. Now is a normal, it's part of, years ago we used to say, oh, only the Chinese wear a mask. Why do they wear a mask? Used to go around in the airport. and Chinese used to wear masks, and we say, oh, why they looked a bit strange, out of place. Now, if you don't wear the mask, you're out of place. So I think it's been accepted. So if we have to wear it, we have to wear it. We have to stick to it. Yeah.
Very good. And I think that point about masks versus social distancing is actually very important. That's the first time I've heard that expressed, and that's a very interesting. Will have an interesting impact, I think, on service, what you can do and how you can do it going forward, potentially for a significant amount of time. Something else around service, though, which is sort of around the social distancing. So this is a question from Bart Debiek from the Edgbaston Park Hotel. Something very close to my heart when I'm out and about in a hotel. What are the prospects of a buffet breakfast returning? Now, I would like to extend that, not just to a buffet breakfast, but to a buffet service style full stop. Now, that is a mainstay of large scale catering, for venues offering weddings, conferences. It's a standard. So, Ciara, what do you think? What are the prospects for a buffet service returning?
I think the prospects are very strong that they will return. I think the question is when it will be allowed, when it will be acceptable. And certainly from the survey that we conducted that I referred to earlier, when we're looking at the trends, we asked them, what are you having? And there was a list as long as your arm, from, firecrackers to bouncing castles to, all sorts of things that people were having as kind of extras at their wedding. But very, very strong coming out of that as a trend was so much were revolved around food and drink, and it was the way that food and drink is served and displayed. So what is very popular and certainly a trend that consumers are looking for, or couples are looking for, would be the likes of gin bars, pimp your Prosecco stations, ice cream trucks, cheese and dessert displays and tables, so that whether it can happen or not, it certainly is something that is in demand by couples. Sam will remember I met him at a conference a couple of years ago, and he was picking my brains. What are the trends? And I told him about the donut walls that were coming in from the US, and he subsequently went and got a lovely donut wall made in his hotel. So it's a lot of the trends are around food and drink, how it's displayed and how it's served. So look, time will tell in terms of restrictions and what is allowed, but certainly, as you said as well, Bim, everybody loves the buffet breakfast, and I do think there is a big demand for that to come back when it is allowed, and that will 100% extend, I think, into events and weddings. Thank you.
Diego, do you see that in terms of the wider hospitality? You agree with that?
I agree 100%. You see, okay, at the moment we don't have buffet, but I believe a beautiful buffet is also a way to show the skills of a chef as well. We have to think of that. I mean, when you go in a breakfast room and it's all nicely presented and clean, it shows the skills of whoever is on the back of house. Also, I'm a great believer that if we bring the buffet back, the guest will see it as an air of going back to normality. You say at the moment they haven't seen a buffet for 6 months, a year. If they start to see the buffet again, it's like, oh, normality is back. At the same time, we might have maybe to adjust a little bit the way, I'm not saying the way the buffet is presented, but the way it's served. Instead of maybe we might not be able to have people queuing to the buffet like we used to, or a lot of people, but maybe it will have to have waiters behind the buffet or chef behind the buffet and doing the job, then serving them. But I agree. I mean, for me, in a beautiful hotel, when you go down for breakfast, you got a beautiful buffet there with all the fruits and eggs and everything. It just gives you an appetite, instead of just sitting at the table and ordering a poached egg or a bacon and egg, whatever it is. It gives you that appetite. And at the end of the day, going out to a beautiful hotel is indulging yourself. And indulging yourself is going there and see all the skills. So yeah, I believe I'm very, very pro-buffet, I'm honest, yeah.
Good. Leigh, do you agree for meetings and events that this is still very much going to be a part of life?
Yeah, I do, and from what Ciara was saying as well, my mouth was watering at the thought of a gin station or a pimp up your Prosecco station. That just music to my ears. However, I would say though, exactly what you were saying though, Diego, in terms of the way it's served, I'm sure we've all seen people approach a buffet as a delegate or as a guest, and the plate of food that they come back with is so mixed. So, you know, you wouldn't necessarily serve up that plate of food at home. And I think from people's mental health and well-being perspective, in terms of the food that they eat in venues, and whether that is at a wedding or a conference, is that there needs to be much more restriction in terms of what that food is served on that plate. And I think from the chef serving it, not only from a safety perspective, but also to enable people not to necessarily overindulge too quickly to, you know, on an ongoing basis, because ultimately, you know, people will go and really go for it on a buffet, and everyone likes a buffet. But I think, you know, hospitality is about, as I say, welcoming people in, and it's about the rainbow of food and how it's served and how it looks. And we're all dying to get back to that, but I do think there will be some restrictions to start with, and they'll probably be welcomed from a waistline perspective as well.
Yes, thank you. One of the things we were looking at in terms of going forward is what the industry is doing and how we're communicating what the industry is doing. So there's 3 questions that I'll add in together that I think sort of sum that up, but open up a very much wider conversation around what we can do, what we're doing, and what we can do. So Graham Hardiman from the Mystery Partnership, Ryan from Switch Hospitality, and Andrew Farrell from Mechline. So 3 questions. First one, once customers have booked to return to properties, what visible evidence are they looking for that operators have taken sufficient steps to protect them against COVID transmission? Or are they just grateful to return to hospitality? The second one, looking at the dates, when we're starting to open up, should venues be quoting for events based on social distancing capacities? Or is it a matter of what the client requests? And how can an operator promote their kitchen hygiene to boost end user confidence? So this is all around really communicating to guests, addressing any concerns they have, reassuring them and giving them confidence. What are we doing at the moment, and what could we do? Perhaps Ciara, let's start off with you, please.
I think communication is absolutely hugely important, and something we've been talking to our clients about over the last year is we're kind of telling them over communicate, don't under communicate, and particularly for couples planning their wedding. I mean, I think we can all agree on this call that weddings are stressful at the best of times. So throw a global pandemic in the mix, and you know, people's anxiety has been going through the roof, and we've really seen it with the survey. People obsessively watching the news, they're having sleep issues, they're even having panic attacks. Like, this is really, really serious. So the more that a hotel or venue can do to reassure that couple, the better. And I think it's about, you know, not waiting until they contact you asking you a question, but trying to be as proactive as possible. You know, some of the suggestions we've made to our clients would be around, you know, potentially sending out a monthly newsletter to their wedding couples, to their database of wedding couples who are maybe, you know, on hold or postponing or, you know, holding dates but not sure when they can go ahead, and just giving them a little update about what's been going on. And you might feel like I've nothing new to tell them in a month, but you know, there's always something, and it's just that little piece of reassurance. And I think the other thing is all around, you know, disseminating the government information, because you know, Boris makes an announcement and then he's kind of gone in almost in a puff of smoke right at the end of the announcement, and then we're all left to kind of figure out, well, what does that actually mean, and what does that actually mean for me? And I think, you know, wedding couples are no different to that. And certainly, you know, in one of the recent announcements, there was a lot of confusion around weddings and where weddings, you know, weddings were allowed to take place again, but then not in hotels. And there was a lot of grey areas, a lot of confusion around it. And I think if, you know, hotels and venues can be at the forefront of that, you know, trying to understand it and then trying to get out there and explain to couples what your interpretation of the rules is. I think always with the caveat of, this is my understanding as of today, you know, because we all know things can change. And, you know, there was, when the roadmap was announced, you know, we thought weddings and show rounds were going to be able to take place much earlier. A few weeks later, it got clarified, and it was like, actually, weddings and hotels can't take place until the later stages. So it, I think, you know, people are quite understanding that things do change, and we're all operating, you know, with the best will in the world. But I still think it's better to communicate something rather than nothing. And just, it's so much just about reassuring couples that are very stressed, and, you know, just, you know, they're looking to us and to you guys as the experts. You know, tell us what we're allowed to do. Tell us, you know, you're kind of the source of truth to those couples. So I just think it's really important to be proactively communicating.
Thanks, Tiago, Leigh, your thoughts on that? What we could do?
Well, I mean, when we think, I mean, on the near future, most of the wedding will be, sadly, people that the wedding was cancelled last year, and it is obviously young couple, then they've been traumatized, I would say, for the whole year. So at the end of the day, the government said, okay, we allow wedding, but it's up to us, obviously, first of all, to make them feel safe, because they want to have their ceremony, but they want to be safe at the same time. And it's up to us, obviously, to make them feel special, but also, it's not just us, it's also the team. We're talking about, it's very important, is the team in hotels, in venues, and in restaurants. I mean, it's nothing worse than going to a place where we preach health and safety, and there we are, we've got just outside the side door, maybe there is some dirt, you go inside the hotel, maybe breadcrumbs still on the floor and like that. So if we cannot preach something, then it's not there. So, but at the same time, we cannot also scare those people, because if we scare them, then we spoil something very, very special. We have to communicate with the hotel, with the managers, and make sure that those people feel comfortable and very special and unique for the day. But we mustn't scare them. They've been scared enough for the whole year. Yeah.
Thank you. Leigh.
Yeah, and I think it's about putting ourselves in their shoes, and about preempting, as Ciara was saying, anxiety and fear, but it's putting yourself in their shoes. How are they going to feel en route? How are they going to feel when they're walking through the door? How are they going to feel when they're checking in, or when they arrive, or when they sit down? And it's actually preempting those steps to show them that you've thought ahead and you've thought about their journey on the way in that property, and giving them the reassurance that you are that one step ahead. And as I said earlier, with all the time that we've gone in the year, with all the protocols, the processes, all the things that have changed, to communicate, as Ciara was saying, is really, really key. You know, we've spent a year doing what we're doing now, in terms of looking down a lens at each other, and we've been meeting like this. Soon, people are going to be doing the other way and reversing. They're going to be looking down the lens back at their families. And for a lot of people, that's a step too far at the moment. They've been used to being at home, communicating as we're doing, you know, attending meetings, but also having a 2-second commute. When that changes, whether that is a business meeting, whether that is attending a function, that is going to be a big, big mindset shift for a lot of people that maybe are not ready for that. And as I said, for me, it's about how you can put yourself in their shoes and preempt that you've actually thought about them, you've thought about them as an individual, and that you've thought about their well-being, their safety, and you're ready to welcome them back into your property. You're ready to welcome them back into your event as an overnight guest, and really to give them that assurance that you've got their best interests at heart. And I think that's really key.
Yeah, very good. In terms of the communication, there's an element that we obviously we need to do in advance to have a booking in the first place. Is there more? Is there more that we need to do when people arrive? What we need to do with people, with training? Is that an element that we need to look at? Making sure that we go perhaps above and beyond what would normally be expected. Is that something we consider? Is that something that's being done, and if so, how is it being done?
I think people need to feel safe when they go in any establishment, and obviously it's up to us or whoever is in charge to train the team. Whoever is there, could be a receptionist, could be a doorman, could be whoever it is, to train those people to make sure that the place is safe. I mean, signage, many other things we can do, mask, etc. But at the same time, we have to remember we are in hospitality, and the COVID world mustn't ruin something that is very, very special for someone else. I mean, we cannot do this because it's COVID. We cannot do that because it's COVID. No, we would spoil their venue. And I noticed in some places, I remember was the excuse, oh, my laptop is not working, my computer is not working, and everyone understand. Now people say, oh, because it's COVID, I cannot do this, I cannot do that, I cannot do that. Well, I'm sorry, I really disagree with that. We can still do the best we can on welcoming those people back. Okay, we maybe have a mask, we maybe got distance to respect, fair enough. We might not have a buffet, fair enough. But we must remember to act even better than we used to act before. Yeah. Because those people, they've been dying to go out, dying to be with people. And if we give them an excuse because of COVID, we cannot do this, it will be a great disappointment. So it's up to us, us front of house people, to put an extra effort, to be a bit elastic sometime, to the smile even bigger and the voice even more strong, to try to help those people. We mustn't blame COVID to cut corner. This is my thing.
I couldn't agree with you more, Diego. And I think that, when we do get out there and get back to, dining and socializing and, celebrating again, the last thing we want to hear about is COVID. And I just think, we have to respect all of the guidelines, of course, but as you said, there should be no excuses. And I love the phrase, no problems, just solutions. And I think if we could, just all collectively take on that mindset, I think it will go such a long way to help the customers trust us, feel safe, feel comfortable, and of course want to return again and again and again to the establishments. I think that's really, really key.
Yeah, and I think that's really prevalent as well when you look in the beer gardens over the last week or so and seeing everybody out there enjoying themselves, freezing cold, but they're enjoying themselves. They've taken away that coldness element because they so want to be there eating, they so want to be there drinking, and that's exactly how it should be when we open indoors again, obviously without the coldness, but people are there to have fun, to socialize and to be together. And that's the thing we've so longed for, is to be together with each other and to have that element of enjoyment and doing what's natural to us.
I think it's really key as well that, there's a huge acknowledgement for what the staff have been through collectively over the last year as well. A lot of people on furlough, maybe they're back now on flexi furlough, but I love Diego's point of we need to smile bigger and try harder and make people feel, raise our voices and put in the energy. But I think, staff, we need to support staff in doing that and be really mindful that, they've had a really hard year, but that, if that energy and optimism is felt by them, and if they can bring that out, then that will be felt by the guests, and it will have a real knock-on positive effect. But I do think it's been a grueling year for a lot of us, and I think we've all ridden that Corona coaster, and there's days, certainly for me personally, when I'm up and I'm feeling positive, and then there's other days I'm just done, I'm flattened, and and I'm, anyone who knows me on the call, a pretty outgoing, bubbly person. But you know, COVID has taken its toll on so many of us, and I think there definitely has to be a recognition of that for the staff in properties. And as Diego said, front of houses, you know, they have to really put their best foot forward, but they need to be supported in doing that.
I agree. I would like to say something. I really agree with you. And you see, you just said a lot of young people, because we have to be honest, people in hospitality, they tend to be quite young. They've been by themselves maybe for months and months, maybe in a small room, I don't know, you know. And now they're going back, and they got, and I mentor quite a lot of them, and they got this fear of people. Am I going to be able to do my job again? Am I going to be able to smile again? Am I going to be able to say hello again like I used to before? They got this fear. But then it's up to us, or up to the management. And maybe I shouldn't say that, but the management should go back on the floor. We need the management on the floor. I mean, I'm not saying time have changed. Nowadays, management, they do need to be in their offices long time, because there is a lot of paperwork, a lot of number to do. But at the end of the day, where do we want the management? We want them on the floor. We want them with those young people, to mentor them, to guide them, to support them. But it's good for the young people, but also good for the guests. I mean, it's nothing worse going in an establishment where is the GM? Who is the GM? Who is the manager? And there are those kids that they are left by themselves. And I really urge a lot of my colleagues to say, come on, guys, we choose this profession because we love people. And we have to be with people. And if we want those young people to do really what we really want, we have to be with them. We have to be with them, obviously, to praise them, but also to tell them off when they need. I mean, we're not just there, but I really urge of people with high responsibility in hotels and restaurants, that especially at the moment, they really should be on the floor with the people, and that will help a lot.
Thank you. I'm looking at maybe a couple more questions, but let's see how this one goes. This is from Ryan at Switch Hospitality. The question is, what are the key priorities for corporate travel travelers at the moment? Has safety superseded rate caps? But I'd like to extend that. So in terms of corporate, for meetings, events, in terms of people getting married, for the wedding industry, what are their key priorities, and have they changed? And into the wider hospitality. So let's start off with Leigh. What do you think of the key priorities, and have they changed?
I do think key priorities have changed. Obviously, people like to have savings in terms of, you know, getting the best rate. That doesn't necessarily mean to be the cheapest. It means that it's offering value, and that, again, we go back to the experience. I think safety is absolutely key. Sustainability is on the agenda as well, that people are accountable for their own measurements of sustainability. But I think, you know, again, I go back to my point of being a service industry, is that people like to negotiate. It's a thing that you do in this industry where you negotiate on price. But actually, there comes a time where if you are negotiating on price so much, there has to be something that gives. And there's a certain point that give comes into, whether it's safety, whether it's value, whether it's experience. And I think it has changed. And I think other people are now involved in corporate decision-making processes of what their policies are. So where before it may be procurement that were driving the cost down, now it's about people and the HR element, and, you know, the culture aspect, that, you know, when you are checking into a hotel, when you are attending a meeting, an event, do you want your employees to feel that you've put them in the cheapest? Probably not. Do you want them to think that you've put them in the safest? Absolutely. Do you want that employee to feel that they are valued by their employer, by the selection that's been put forward to them from staying away at home? And I go back to my earlier point where we haven't stayed away from home for so long. That first night away, you don't want it to be the cheapest. You don't want it to be some dingy property down the road that you have to walk, that you don't feel safe, because you will be looking back to your employer to say, is that what I'm worth? So I think, yes, there's always a bottom line where a property will come down to a certain price point, or there is a certain price point that a corporate is willing to pay, but there has to be a bit more flexibility. So if you want to pay that price, you're going to have to come out of the city a little bit more, or you're not going to be able to stay on a Wednesday night when a football team are playing. It's all these things where we're going to have to make compromises. But the bottom line for me is that cheapest isn't always the best. And I know that in my own personal life, and I'm sure we all experience that as well, that sometimes we do want to go a little bit lower in price, but without actually taking the compromise and the hit in other areas which are really, really important to us.
Ciara, what insights do you have around the wedding industry and priorities?
Well, I really echo everything that Leigh said, and I think, you know, we have all collectively suffered over the last year. Those of us in this industry have suffered very acutely. But, you know, I mean, my brother works in tech. He, you know, has a really good job. He's just now working from home. Himself and his wife have saved a packet during COVID. Like, they've had no holidays, no dining out, no socializing, no commute, no lunches in the city. You know, they've saved so much money. And I do feel like there is a kind of a treat yourself mentality at the moment. Like, we're like, oh yeah, we'll treat ourselves. Like, certainly my online shopping has crept up to be a little bit of a problem in the last few months. Or, you know, you're getting the fancier takeaway on the Friday night, you know, because we do feel like we deserve. We've been through a lot, and we deserve to treat ourselves. And I think that will flow into every consumer decision over the next 12 to 18 months. For weddings specifically, from our survey, we know that for 67% of couples, their budget hasn't changed. You know, I think we're all very mindful in this industry of people being laid off or being you know, on furlough for extended periods of time. We have to remember that other industries aren't like this. It's business as usual for them, and those people have been saving money, and they're getting their, you know, fancy garden furniture, and they're an extension out the back, and, you know, they're putting, you know, they have more disposable income out there, and I do think that it's quality is so important. In our recent survey, that when we asked couples what was the number one thing in your deciding factor for your wedding venue, location was number one, which it always is, no surprise there. But number two was food quality. Number three was one wedding per day. They want to feel special, you know. So they're really, I think, key trends that are affecting weddings, affecting corporate, and I think affecting, you know, the normal consumer. We want that feeling of to be special, and that we are being treated a little bit, and it is memorable. I think that's definitely very much a priority for people now.
Anything else you see here? I'm thinking about your industry report, your wedding industry report, and anything that insights you got there about I don't know, venues, about decision making. I mean, what are the respondents to your report telling you about what they're feeling and what they want?
Well, definitely, I think, you know, when we look at the venue mix as well, hotels are typically about 26% of the market share. That's gone up on last year's survey. I think hotels are kind of seen as a safe bet for a wedding now, when there is so many things changing. So that's certainly important. And then, you know, I think so much of it comes down to the person who the couple is dealing with, because particularly with a wedding, it's very different to a corporate booking. It's a very emotive decision, and they're not just buying the venue, they're not just buying the you know, the great menu. You know, it's really a connection that they feel with the wedding coordinator, or, you know, whoever they're dealing with on property. And I hear time and time and time again, the reason why somebody books with a venue, number one, or even during COVID when people were maybe even changing venues, the reason that they changed is potentially because the venue they were dealing with was non-communicative, or they were being really difficult about, you know, moving deposits to different dates and stuff like that. So I think so much is to do with the personality of person on the other end of the phone or the email for those couples. I think that can't be underestimated. But I do think that in Ireland now, weddings are allowed restart again for, well, at the moment it's 6 guests, and it's going to increase to 25 guests. And then we have different tiers, kind of slightly different to you guys. So it's 25 guests, 50 guests, and 100 guests are the different levels. And so people are planning their weddings and having kind of their ideal guest list, and then kind of a guest list B, and maybe even a guest list C, right, depending on numbers and depending on restrictions. But people are still spending the big bucks. A hotel that I work with normally at 75 euros a head. He just did a wedding there 2 weeks ago, 600 euros a head, because they were obviously, it was a tiny little wedding, so they went for the best of everything, and he was delighted, obviously, to have the business. So I do think, yeah, as I say, it's that treat yourself mentality can't be underestimated. And I think it's just understanding that, communicating really, really well with couples, and giving them the best day, and obviously increasing your upsells and your revenue and your margin as a result. But it's really with the customer in mind and making sure they have an unforgettable experience.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you have to build, as a obviously said in a wedding, what is so important is you have to gain the trust of your guest. If you gain the trust of your guest, then actually cost is not really a matter, because that guest trusts you. And when the guest trusts you, not just in wedding, but in many, especially on a big scale party, if the guest trusts you, the guest will be happy to pay a little bit more. He won't mind, because he knows then that person is going to give him or give her a wonderful day. I mean, earlier on we were saying cutting price is cutting. We can cut, but very often is, in England, I think you've got to say, save the penny to pay the pound. You know, I mean, you can save a penny, and then at the end they say, well, I would have paid a bit more. Earlier on also you were talking about corporate. I'm talking about obviously corporate businessmen. I mean, not maybe wedding. I know, I mean, I speak to a lot of people like all of you, and everyone says, oh, Zoom is taking over. Zoom is taking over. Well, Zoom is taking over at the moment. This is what I think. I mean, this is my belief. I think corporate will come back. Corporate will come back. Maybe we won't have the number that we used to have before, or the size that we used to have before. But between all of us, a good meeting around a big table or a boardroom, I think we all agree is better than on a screen. I mean, years ago, people used to make deals in restaurants, used to have 3 glasses of wine, a cigar, and 3 glasses of port. That is thing of the past. But I'm a great believer that people, colleagues, want to meet, to sit, to meet, to chat, to communicate. And I think business is done even better as well. The party will be smaller, but corporate for me will go back. Will go back in the next year, I would say. Yeah.
Very good. Thank you. I think we are nearly out of time. Perhaps one quick statement from each of the panel, and it comes back to the thing that Sam asked you maybe a couple of years ago, Ciara. And I'll start with you. Future trends. What do you see happening with in mind what we've just been talking about, and some uncertainty as to what's going to happen?
I think COVID has amplified a lot of things, right? So for me, using the example Diego gave about Zoom, I was using Zoom in my business because obviously I live in Ireland. So I was using it in my business before COVID, but oh my God, it's exploded now and everybody's using it. I think it's the same with weddings. So we had started to see a trend for more intimate weddings. Before COVID, with guest numbers, wedding parties getting slightly smaller, couples spending that little bit more money and having a more intimate celebration. And I think COVID has absolutely accelerated that, and people are really looking at their guest list and, you know, minding their numbers kind of thing. And then the other trend is again something we had started to see before COVID, but it's amplified again, is what I mentioned earlier. So food and drink displays and serving food and creating these kind of Instagrammable moments at weddings, because it's you know, of course, weddings are so visual, and particularly if the numbers are small, they maybe want to be showing off their wedding to the people who weren't there. It's very competitive, you know. So I think there are two trends that I would say to certainly keep an eye out for the future.
Thank you. Diego, future trends, anything you can see changing?
Well, because I'm a front of house man, but I believe that after COVID, front of house will play a key factor on success of a business. I'm honest. People obviously will go out to have a good time, to feel safe, but the front of house people, food will be important. I would say decor will be important, but without the right people in the front of house, welcoming those guests, making sure they're happy, making sure they're safe. I think the front of house will have will be a key factor of success, and people returning. People, they want to be looked after at the end of the day. They want to be cared about it. And only human being can do that. Machine cannot do that. Light bulb cannot do that. So we really have to care about those young people who are on the front of house. But that is my opinion for the future to come. Yeah.
Leigh, what do you see?
I agree with what Diego was saying in terms of just the whole experience, and similar to what Ciara was saying as well, is that people may be going to lesser things, so they were going to lesser events or lesser conferences, but what they will want to do is to come away with that overarching feeling of experience, and that will come through the food, through the, you know, as you say, the front of house, and the experience from start to finish. So I think you'll see probably less actual volume, but higher spend, higher amount of people, and I think that's what will drive the future trends, and something, you know, we just can't wait to get to that point. All of us, I'm sure, are absolutely chomping at the bit to be sat shoulder to shoulder, whether that is in a wedding, whether that is in a meeting, rather than being face to face through Zoom, and, you know, bring it on.
Lovely, thank you very much. Before, we're going to segue seamlessly into our AGM in a couple of minutes, but before we do that, thank you very much to Leigh, Ciara and Diego for joining us. I hope it was useful and interesting for everyone who's observing now or viewing later. Perhaps a couple of closing words before we go to our AGM from our chair, Sam.
Massive thank you to you for chairing this. Leigh, Ciara and Diego, wow, fantastic. I've been scribbling away busily trying to get all of those key points coming down, as Ciara mentioned a couple of years ago when I was picking her brains about what are the future wedding trends, and I went away and bought that donut love heart shape thing, and yeah, it was very popular. And the Pimp Your Proseccos and these weird chairs that we now sit on as well. So no, thank you. Some really great things there. Face coverings, standard uniform from now on. Yeah, I pick up my keys, I pick up my wallet, I pick up my face covering. You know, very true. What a great question about the importance of the buffet, because wow, do I miss a buffet? You know, but it's true. As Leigh was saying about, you know, the overindulgence as well, and you know, we need to be mindful of that and be very cautious of how we're serving it, and the presentation, you know, making it look gorgeous. Providing reassurances, really important message there, and being proactive with it so that we're giving our customers, our guests, the information. We're reassuring them that they're in safe hands with us. We don't want to be scaring our guests, and that continuous thinking about their well-being, because it has been a challenging year for everybody, and so the well-being piece is huge. And yeah, what a great point. Don't use COVID as an excuse. You know, I've been to so many places, oh, we do it like that because of it's COVID. Come on, let's not use that as an excuse. You know, we're in the industry, in the business to make people happy, and let's do that. management back on the floor. So any of you that don't know, I run a hotel in Windsor. On Saturday, there was quite a large event in Windsor, and we also opened an outside garden area as well. First time I've done a 10 till 10, solidly running on my feet. I couldn't walk on the Sunday, but yeah, definitely the importance of being back on the floor. And you see so many more things that way, don't you? You see the hassles that the team have to deal with. You interacting with our wonderful customers and understanding what they're wanting and what they're not wanting. So I can agree with that more. Definitely cheapest is certainly not always the best. Let's be treating ourselves. I've treated myself a couple of times to some lovely meals at the boat, courteous thanks to Steve and his team. And I've got lots of more treats lined up as well. And great to hear that 67% of weddings, their budgets have not changed. So that's good to hear. Building trust, really important. Keep on going with the intimate weddings, Instagrammable displays, and providing just amazing experiences. So that's my whistle-stop tour of the notes that I've been busily jotting down. A massive thank you again to Diego, Ciara and Leigh. Thank you to BIM for being a wonderful host, and a massive thank you to the committee of the Institute of Hospitality Midlands branch that do so much work behind the scenes, especially Sarah and Steve, Tim, Craig, Tony, Ryan, Caitlin, Rob. Thank you to everybody for that. Our next event, well, we're coming into our AGM, and so feel free to stay on for the AGM, those who wish to, but the next formal Institute of Hospitality event that's scheduled is on the 8th of June, and that's going to be a great session with Kate Nichols of UK Hospitality, OBE. So that's the 8th of June, and further information will be sent out in due course.